I turn on Jeopardy or no? Should I wait?
Yeah, no, I'll go in there if I have to talk. I just, hold on a second.
Hi, Smell, come and sit with me. What are you?
Okay, hold on a second. Be quiet for a second because I got to get this off. Okay. Okay, written. Nancy Hale. And then addition.
That's where it's- And that's hers. Mm.
Seems like Paul Hinton looks kind of like Lynette.
How did, that's weird. I used a Zoom link. I'll rename.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Where did it go? Thank you for pointing that out. I
I
had,
just, I thought, I don't think that's Paul.
I had trouble making a link work. There we are. My.
Lynette,
Yes.
on the appeal of the short-term rental, when it comes, couple things. As part of my presentation, I'll review what's been provided in the packet
Mhm.
and all the items. And then you might want to let know the order that the appealing party, Eric and Leslie Britton will be up first to talk
Okay.
after the staff presentation.
Okay. Appealing party. Okay.
The licensee just called, so I was able to go over it with him. Just to let him know when they're expected to talk.
Okay.
And then
Hang on.
when we
Just,
get,
okay.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get this into the Eric and is her name? Her name's Leslie.
Leslie,
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
and then Shane Henry is the licensee.
Mhm,
And then as far as the general public,
mhm.
they might, if you'd ask them to indicate in the chat that they want to speak,
Sure.
because we'll probably have attendees that may or may not want to speak. When it gets to that point, so that Jennifer can promote them so they can talk.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then Jerry will help out at the end. That's about all.
All right. Okay. Kent, before you go away, so
Right here.
on these comments and written testimony that we got after the packet went out, is it okay for me to just list who sent in comment?
Yeah, you can. I was going to, as the reviewing the items in the packet, then I'll ask Jennifer. We've received a number of other letters that have been provided
Okay, and
to the
have
board.
Jennifer read them. Yeah,
and then read off them or whatever.
okay, wonderful. That works for me.
And just read that something came from them, not read the entire letter into the
Right.
record.
It might be good to just note after she reads the name of who sent it in, whether they wrote in support of or in opposition of granting the license.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that you, Tim? 720-402-4903?
Yes, it is.
All right, I guessed right.
Okay. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We need at least one. Oh, we've got 5. We've got 5. Good. All right.
Start video. There.
Just about there. I know I could start, but I think I'm gonna wait for Jerry just to make sure he's here, because this first part goes pretty fast. Hi there, Paul. And there's Jerry. Jerry, are you all connected? Can you hear us?
I don't think he has his audio yet.
Okay,
How about now?
there we
Oh,
go.
yep.
Okay.
Okay,
All I can see is Lynette, but I can hear you.
okay, very good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead. It is 6:05 PM on July 28th, 2020, and I'm calling the meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Georgetown to order. Would everybody please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the
the United States of America
America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
stands one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty.
justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. I am Lynette Kelsey, Police Judge. Rob Connell,
Here.
Keith Holmes,
Here.
John Jennings. Say here.
Here.
Thank you. Paul Hinton.
Here.
Thank you. Mary Smith
Sure.
and Tim Allen.
Here.
Thank you. And we have a quorum. Agenda approval. Does anybody have anything to add or change on the agenda?
Can we just get an update on staff reports of the 15th and Rose situation? Please.
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to add? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Is there anyone here for audience business?
If they are, they might want to type into the chat so I can
Yes.
promote them to speak.
We'll give it a minute to type in. All right, seeing none, we will move on. Next, we have the payables. What were presented to us were the payables from July 10th through July 23rd, 2020. Any questions or comments on any of those payables? If there aren't any questions or comments, could I have a motion to approve the payables as presented?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payables from July 10th through July 23rd, 2020 as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
If I could interrupt for one moment, Lynette, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Sure.
Nancy Hale has her hand up, so I'm not sure if she wanted to say something during audience business, but I'll go ahead and let her talk,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, Nancy. I'm promoting you to a panelist now, so you can go ahead and speak if you have something to.
Hello, can you
Hi,
hear me?
Nancy. Yes.
Right, is this the area that we talk about what the meeting is about, or just is the meeting back and forth questions? I was unsure.
Okay, this is just what we just passed was audience business for anything that is not on the agenda. If you're here to speak on the short-term rental issue, that's on the agenda and that's later in the agenda.
Perfect, thank you, Lynette.
Sure. Okay. Jennifer, are you going to mute that one? Mute her for the time being?
Yes, I will. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have the minutes. Let's take them one by one. We have the minutes of the July 7th, 2020 special meeting. Anybody have any comments or corrections on that? Okay, if nobody else has any, I had a couple. Under the persons listed in the audience and one of our speakers was Dr. Tim Ryan. I'd like his title used. And under the testimony from Corlew Anderson, if we change in the second to the last full sentence, change the word ordered to orders. And then in the last full sentence, to change from she does not have a backdoor delivery and the closure will make receiving deliveries difficult for the store. Under Anne Marie Cannon's testimony, if we could change the word sake in the middle sentence to safe. And further down on page 3, under my statement, second sentence, change the word if to is. Under other statements by selectmen, there was nothing in the minutes for testimony from Tim Allen. Did we have something to add there?
I'm going to go back and check that.
Okay.
And yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so Jennifer's going to check that. And then in the face covering order section on that same page, the second to the last line, if we change the word made to met, and then insert the word state between the word amended and public on that same line. And then in the motion that Tim Allen made to on the face covering order, I wasn't sure whether the wording was supposed to be adopt the Clear Creek County's face covering order or follow the Clear Creek County face covering order. So if we could check that as well. And maybe go ahead and if anybody, does anybody else have any corrections or additions? Is everybody in agreement that we wait until our next meeting to approve those minutes?
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. And then if we move on to the minutes from our regular meeting of July 14th, 2020, any corrections or additions on that? The only one that I have had was the date for the Business Promotions Commission workshop meeting. Was that actually on the 3rd or was it on the 10th?
Yeah, you were right. It was on the 10th.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any other additions or corrections? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of July 14th, 2020 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the July 14th, 2020 regular meeting as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Okay, so item number 1 on our agenda is a public hearing for an appeal to a short-term rental license that was granted to a property 300 Tao Street. I'm going to read off the procedure that we're going to follow. Jerry, should I do that before we get into the public hearing, or should we call the public hearing open? He's not here anymore. I'm going to go ahead and call the public hearing open just to be on the safe side then. I hereby call to order the public hearing for an appeal of a short-term rental application at 300 Tao Street. The time is 6:16 p.m. Okay, so the procedure we're going to follow for the public hearing is to announce the item, which we've done, called the public hearing to order. I'm going to, we'll start off with the staff presentation, which Kent will do. Jerry may add to it if he wishes. Next, we will, and then we will entertain questions of staff or of the staff from the Board of Selectmen. Next, we will hear from the appealing party, which is Eric and Leslie Breton. And that can be followed by questions from the board. And after that, we will hear from the licensee, which is Shane Henry. Then we will have questions from the board if there are any. And after that, we will have general public testimony. If you want to speak during public testimony, you need to request it during the chat. And I'm going to let Jennifer handle promoting people and unmuting them as they come up in line and have requested that they'd like to speak. So, and after that, we'll close. If questions from the public, they'll be addressed after public testimony is concluded. Then we'll close the public testimony. Then the licensee and appealing party can respond to questions from the public. Staff will then respond to questions from the public. And then we will close the public hearing. And after that, no further comment from the appealing party, licensee, or public will be accepted. The board will then deliberate on the short-term rental license appeal and take action as appropriate. So does everybody understand that? Any questions before we launch? Okay. So first off, we're going to hear from staff, and I believe Kent's going to start that off.
Police Judge Kelsey and members of the board, we had received an application for a short-term rental at 300 Tao Street. That application is included in your packets, and I'll just review what's in your been provided in your packets and some other letters that have been, since the packets have been delivered, other letters have come in. But what's in your packet is after the short-term rental application went through its process, which includes several things as part of that, and then 2 rounds of letters that went to the neighbors. The application was approved with, and that's included in your, got to slow myself down. Sorry about that. What's included in your packet is the application for the short-term rental. The very first things are a couple letters and then the appeal letter, but I'll get to that in a minute. But it has the short-term rental permit application, which includes some basic information, and then the short-term rental permit application review is included in your packet. and a copy of the letters that was sent to the property owners, or the letter that was sent notifying of the possibility of appeal, and a copy of the letter of the original application that was sent out to the neighbors, just as it's done with a number of properties in town. What's also included is the 2 pictures of the garage and driveway, and then the business license application for the licensee, the life safety inspection, and the insurance. That's been included in your packet. As part of the short-term permit application review, include the owner's name and address and the property address, owner representative contact information if it's needed, the parking plan, the property and liability insurance, and the application fee. There was a couple comments during the initial application process. There was an email from Eric and Leslie Britton at 306 Taos. There was also a verbal comment made face-to-face from Corlew Anderson. According to the code, I went ahead and approved the application, but with conditions. It was different than what the application had requested. Limited the number of guests allowed due to the parking plan, and also stated that there would be no on-street parking allowed with the short-term rentals at this address. So those were the 2 conditions attached to the approval. And then spoke with Eric and Leslie Britton, and also spoke with 1 or 2 other people, but mainly with Eric, about what he could do regarding the process. I said, according to the code, and showed him the code, the appeal process, and what it would take to appeal. The appeal was received from Eric and Leslie Britton with all the appropriate information in place. And they have provided a letter, obviously also with the appeal. We've also received letters, and I'm just going to read off the names of the people of the letters that have been involved somewhere in the packet. I think 4 more have been sent to each board member in the time since the packet was delivered on Friday. We had some additional ones today that were received. We have received letters, and I wrote these down in an order, so I'm sorry if it's not in the order that you have them, but we received letters from Dustin Schaefer, from Cora Lou Anderson, from Andrew Wassman, from Kyle and Katie Rutten, and if I mispronounce the name, please forgive me, from Tom Elliott, from Barbara Downing. We also received a letter from Pauline Marshall. We also received a letter from Nancy Hale, and also representing HGI, and then which is Historic Georgetown Incorporated, and then Bob Shackley, and then also from Greg Peterson and Tom Patterson, and from the Britons. So those are the letters that we've received.
Also, there was one from Ann Farrow.
I have not found that letter, Keith.
Okay.
So, and Jennifer actually called Ann directly, and I don't think we got a satisfactory result from that. So
I have a copy.
No, we did not receive it.
I have a copy of it. I'll send it to you.
okay, thank you, Keith.
Mhm.
And then, but that's the letters we've received. And all of them should have been sent to you in one way or another. Except for the last one that was just received less than a half hour ago, but
Kent, we also received a letter from the property owner as well.
oh yes, from Shane Hale as well.
Henry.
So, and Jennifer, am I missing anybody?
I believe you got them all.
Okay. And so we set the date for hearing for tonight's date. It needed to be at least 15 days out. And the property was posted 15 days ago from today's date. And it was also posted in the normal posting places as far as the post office and town hall. So, and that's where we come to this meeting. So that's how it's laid out at this point.
All right. Jerry, did you have anything to add at this point?
No, you're good. You've gotten in the, all the exhibits. We'll need to make sure that the exhibit that Dr. Holmes mentions is provided to all the board members, because if it isn't, it's not something that the board can rely on.
Right.
But we'll confirm that at the end of the hearing. Let's not do it now. I'll confirm at the end of the hearing all the exhibits. But
Okay.
no, you're good, and I think you proceed through the
Okay.
the order of events.
All right. Are there any questions that any of the board have for staff at this time?
I have a question on the application. What was the original occupancy requested?
Do you have it? Sorry.
It was 8 that was asked, occupancy of rental guests.
Okay, thanks.
This is Tim, and I had a question too, Kent. Did on the application, did they specify parking other than the garage and driveway? Did they want on-street parking too?
I don't think it's really listed on the application that way. The parking
Okay.
plan just really mentioned the driveway and the garage. So,
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Questions for staff? Seeing none, we will move on. Next, we will hear from the appealing party, which are Eric and Leslie Britton. And Jennifer's promoting them, and hi there. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Go right ahead. It's your turn.
Okay. I'm Eric and this is Leslie Britton. We've owned our home at 306 Tow Street since 2011. We greatly appreciate being able to speak to the board regarding this appeal regarding the permit for a short-term rental at 300 Tow Street. Since becoming part-time residents of Georgetown, we've seen letters come in almost every year with requests for short-term rentals, and we have seen them in the proximity of our home, and we've seen them, continually approved. At the present time, we believe there are permits that have been granted for 307 Taos, 404 Taos, 404 and a half 2nd Street, 409 3rd Street, and then finally this request for 300 Taos Street. So if one looks in perhaps a 200-foot radius of our home, we would be faced with 5 short-term rentals just in that small area within Ward 1. And we've listed a few things in our letter to the board or to Kent about the effects that we feel are made upon the community when there are short-term rentals of if you're next to them or down the street. They're not all positive for the community nor for the neighbors to the short-term rental properties. We would request that the board establish a method to look carefully at the density of short-term rentals in smaller areas. If you look in the proximity or within a few hundred feet of our home, we're way above what the town initially hoped for of a 7% level. We're probably at a 40% level of homes in our immediate neighborhood at the corner of 3rd and Taos that are short-term rental properties. As we've said, we've been residents part-time at Georgetown for almost a decade now, and we love and appreciate the feel of the town, the respect for the history. Obviously, our home itself is almost 150 years old now, and we want to see that preserved moving forward, along with the wonderful friends and neighbors that we have in the town. We want the community feel to continue as well. We believe that allowing continued approval without looking more carefully at the density of short-term rentals will have a negative impact on the community as a whole. So our basic request is that the selectmen review this appeal regarding the permit, consider rejecting the permit itself, and try to establish a method moving forward to establish more careful assessment of whether permits should be granted or not. I think that summarizes it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does anyone from the board have a question for the Britons?
Yeah, I have one question. You say you're a part-time resident. About how much time, percentage-wise, do you spend here versus somewhere else?
Our full-time home is in Parker, and we stay in our Georgetown house for weekends and sometimes during the week. I would say less than a full week each month.
Okay.
Anyone else on the board have a question for the Britons? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. And we will move on. Next, we will hear from the licensee, which is Shane Henry. Give Jennifer a moment to promote him and get his audio going. And
can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shane Henry. I'm the owner and resident of 300 Taos Street. Nice to meet all of you. I wish it was under more positive circumstances. Did you all receive my letter? Did you guys get a chance to review it?
Yes, we did. I did.
Okay. It looks like not everyone did. So
I didn't. I haven't gotten a letter from Dustin, Andy Wasserman, or Shane. All I've got is letters from Downing, Britton, and Marshall.
So just the ones that were in the packet, Rob?
Yeah.
So Jennifer.
Oh, everything came in later?
Yes.
Oh, there we are.
Yes, it did.
Got it.
So it's in your email. Okay, thanks.
So I'm just going to go ahead and read this response because I don't think everyone got it. And I think it gives a good idea of what I'm doing here. So in response to the Britons appeal letter, dear neighbors and owners of 306 Taos Street, I was hoping for a more welcoming introduction than this appeal letter. I moved to 300 Taos Street on April 9th of this year. The only time I've ever seen anyone at the property located at 306 Taos Street was on July 5th. I was wanting to meet you guys that day, but we didn't get the opportunity to visit. Some of my relatives were passing through town. I wanted to stop by and congratulate me to see the new house. At some point during the afternoon, someone smoked marijuana in my garage. People were celebrating. It was a holiday and it was on private property. No laws were broken and it was no way meant to be disrespectful. You might have assumed we were renters, so maybe that's why you avoided an introduction. The home is not yet furnished, other than one small bed and a few sofas. This home deserves special furniture that complements the era, so it will take quite some time until I'm able to host overnight guests. I understand your concern for short-term rental licenses in our neighborhood, but I'm not planning to use the property for that specific purpose. I live here. I'm simply exercising my right as a property owner and taxpayer to obtain the short-term rental license under the Georgetown short-term rental laws. And my response here to the town of Georgetown, dear town of Georgetown and Board of Selectmen, my name is Shane Henry. I'm the owner and resident of 300 Towle Street in Georgetown. I've been here at this address since April 9th. Moving here has been one of the best decisions of my life. I was born in Durango, Colorado, and grew up in Cortez, Colorado. I moved to Denver in 2000 and lived in Clear Creek County from 2007 to 2011. I've been trying to purchase a home in Georgetown for nearly a decade, and this year it finally happened. I was at Loveland Ski Area working on the computer before chairlifts opened, and a new listing popped up on the MLS. I work as a professional real estate broker. Instead of going skiing that day, I scheduled a home showing to see the property. I've been inside thousands of homes in my real estate career, and 300 Towle Street is possibly the most special home I've ever stepped foot in. After the showing, I immediately drove back to the office to submit an offer, and the seller accepted. My dream came true. I achieved a lifetime goal to own my dream home near the ski area and one of my favorite places on earth. I'm not a property manager, nor do I deal with rental properties. My job is to consult and assist sellers and buyers with transactions when selling and buying real estate. My intentions are not to turn this special home into a party house or full-time short-term rental. There happened to be one short-term rental license left for this ward, so I applied for it legally just to have the option if I decide to rent my home. It would be very rarely. In the unlikely event that my career slowed down to the point of financial hardship, I wanted to have the option to legally rent my house for a few weeks out of the year, possibly during the holidays when I'm out of town visiting family. The town of short-term rental guidelines has granted maximum occupancy of 4 adults for this STR license. This means 1 single family or 2 adult couples. I don't plan to rent this home to large groups who could possibly damage the property. When speaking with other historic Victorian homeowners in the neighborhood, they say do not rent to long-term renters. They won't take care of the property and will trash the house. Short-term rentals are far more respectful to the property than long-term renters. The last thing I want is for my home to be destroyed. Much of the wallpaper and woodwork would be nearly impossible to repair or replace. I'm currently in transition to becoming a full-time resident of Georgetown. I plan to retire in my home at 300 Towle Street. I will be here for the remainder of my life. I'm hopeful for another 40 or 50 years. I'm here in Georgetown most of the time, 4+ nights per week, sometimes more than that. I have a small home in Denver where I sleep when working hours conflict or I-70 traffic is a mess. I'm a tax-paying property owner, and it is my legal right under Georgetown STR law to acquire an STR license. I've followed all rules, ordinances, and guidelines. I've spent over $1,000 to get the business and tax license with the town, state, county, and I fall under the strict 7% limit for STR homes in the neighborhood. This is the last permit for this neighborhood. If I don't get the STR license, someone else will, and it will probably be an investor who's going to turn another property in the same neighborhood into a full-time Airbnb. That's not what's happening at 300 Towle Street. I live here. I plan to preserve the historical integrity of the home, the property, and the neighborhood. Georgetown law allows STR license under these guidelines, and as elected officials, I would hope that you would abide to your legal obligation to not act capriciously in your decision to allow me to acquire this license. In my business as a real estate professional, there's the fair housing and equal housing opportunity to be non-discriminatory in the terms and be free from harassment or intimidation for exercising fair housing rights. This situation feels very similar, and you can allow one neighbor to acquire the same license in the same neighborhood under the 7% STR law, but not allow me to acquire the same license while following all laws and guidelines to legally acquire the STR license, simply because a neighbor doesn't like me or doesn't like the idea of having a rental next door. I understand that the homeowners don't want a whole neighborhood full of STRs, but that's why there's a 7% rule, right? My intention is to use the 300 Towle Street address as my home and a place for my family to live and grow for many years to come, not to use it as a money machine. The people that sold me the home introduced me to some of the nice folks at Georgetown Historical Society. I did plan to get involved with Historical Society as soon as possible, although it looks like they might not want me now after seeing their letter. I fill my gas tank twice per week at the Georgetown market. I do all my grocery shopping there. I regularly patronize every single restaurant in town. Although I even buy groceries at Cora Lou's store, and she's against me as well. I rarely spend money outside of Georgetown town limits. I'm a firm believer in spending money where it makes a difference rather than shopping at Walmart and Safeway. I'm constantly here pulling weeds, watering flowers, and fixing gutters to ensure my home is the best possible condition. Almost every time I walk the dog, I'm picking up trash and litter around the neighborhood. I'm much more invested in this town, community, and neighborhood than most of the property owners in Georgetown who rarely visit their mountain home. I look forward to being involved with my new community, meeting the neighbors, and making new friends. You're all stuck with me here in Georgetown for the rest of my life, so I very much hope to have a harmonious relationship with all of you. My contact information is at the top of the letter, and I welcome and encourage everyone to please reach out and introduce themselves. I'm happy to answer questions and discuss any of your concerns, and I look forward to eventually meeting all of you. I did want to show you guys around my block here. It looks like a lot of the letters, people are really concerned with the parking. And as you can see, this is Taos Street. There's not one car. No, there's one car. Actually, it's my very friendly neighbor on the other side of the Britons. When he asked what this hearing was about, I told him that the Britons sent a letter, and he said, well, why do they care? They're never here. I've only seen them there one time. I mean, they're here. I'm here 5 nights a week, probably, if not more. This is third. There's no parking problems here. The entire corner is empty. There's not one car parked anywhere near the house. Also, this house is that Jen lives there. She's there a lot. She's out of town a lot too. That's Dustin Schaefer's dad's old house. That's a short-term rental. There's only been renters in there maybe 2 or 3 times, if that, since I've lived here, since April 9th. Behind me is the mill. Obviously, there's no one there. There's one more short-term rental on this block. I want to say it's 409 3rd, the purple house, or it's a blue house right here. There's only been 1 or 2 renters there the whole time I've lived here. The homeowners are there a lot. The house next door to them on that side they're part-time. They live here, I think, during the wintertime for ski season. This block's empty. I'm surrounded by empty houses. The house next door behind me, empty. They come up on the weekends once in a while. The Britton's house next door to me, it's empty. The house kitty corner from me on this side, next door to the mill, it's empty. They're there once in a while. So I'm not really sure what the problem is with the parking. Most of these homes surrounding me sit empty. I live here. This isn't my short-term rental property where I make a bunch of money. But I want to have the option. I'm exercising my right as a tax-paying property owner to obtain a short-term rental permit under your guys' guidelines and laws. In no way am I trying to change your town. I mean, I'm going to live here for the rest of my life. So this is my dream home, and I've been trying to buy a home, like I said in the letter, for the last 10 years here. And now I'm here, so I'm not going anywhere. I stay in Denver 2 nights a week if the traffic's too bad to come back. And I don't know. I'm not that concerned about the short-term rental license. At this point, it's just the principle of obtaining it because I've spent the money. It's my legal right as a property owner. I've followed all of your rules and guidelines, and I don't see what the problem is. I would really wish that I could have met you all under different circumstances. And I don't really know neighbors and friends in the town that have decided to submit some letters to you guys and might be wanting to speak on my behalf as well during this meeting. And I don't really know what else to say. I hope you guys did get my letter and, vote to your legal, not because someone doesn't like me, I haven't done anything illegal. I've followed every single one of your guys' rules, so I'm not really sure what else to do. But I wish I would have known that this was going to be an issue before I spent, I don't know, $1,100 or $1,200 on going through the whole licensing process. Do you guys have any questions for me? Because I really would like to.
Well, I was going to ask the board if they had any questions, but I just wanted to wait until you were done.
Okay, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the parking, I wrote a couple notes here. I don't think there's really anything else I have. Yeah, I don't know. Really the point of the story is I've done nothing illegal, and I live here, and so I hope to be a part of our community and be an asset to the community. I don't want to be someone who comes in and turns this beautiful home into a crazy short-term rental hotel, because that's not what it is. I don't even have furniture in this house. I mean, I can't host overnight guests. It's going to take a while for me to find stuff that fits it. I can't put IKEA furniture in here or American Furniture Warehouse stuff. I mean, I don't know really what the problem is.
Okay.
But I hope to be a good neighbor to all of you guys and a good friend and contribute to the community as much as I possibly can. So
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have any questions.
All right. If you're done, I will open it up for questions from the board. Does anybody have a question for Shane?
Lynette, this is Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, I had a question for Mr. Henry. On the let me find the page here. The permit application review, it was specified that your parking would be limited to the garage and the driveway. Through your presentation here, you were talking about the street. Are you okay with just parking on the driveway and in the garage?
Yeah, that was the whole point of the town giving me the 4-person maximum occupancy. And I do have the space for it. Although the reason I was showing you guys the parking, not that I want to use that for rentals. I may not even ever rent this house. And there's a good chance I might not even ever rent it. But it seemed like the concern with the letters that were submitted were with the parking. There's absolutely zero worry or concern for parking. It's wide open. There's no I'm not planning on to use it for that, but I was just proving a point.
Okay.
That this street corner is wide open. And there's only people here possibly weekends when people are using Rutherford Trail and the parking lot at the top of the hill gets filled up. I've seen a few people park in front of the mill and in front of my house for that reason. Other than that, there's wide open parking on my whole block in front on Taos and on 3rd as well, on the 400th block of 3rd.
Okay. Any other questions, Tim?
Not for me, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much, Shane, for presenting your case.
Thanks, Lynette.
All right. So we are now at general public testimony, and I will let Jennifer cue everybody up as they've requested a chance to speak.
Okay, and first we're going to have Tom Elliott. So I'm just promoting him now. You ready, Tom?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Tom. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, I'd just like to comment, Mr. Henry, I would think it a great pleasure to meet you sometime. You seem to be taking this hearing very personally, and I don't think there's anyone, especially if we haven't even met you, we're certainly not opposing you personally, but you have to understand that this is an old town. We have a lot of elderly residents, and some of us have a difficult time allowing more than what we think is the maximum short-term rentals allowed in certain areas. So certainly, and I'm going to tell this right now, I really think that the Board of Selectmen should sometime in the very near future consider lowering at least Ward 1 short-term rentals from 7% occupants of the dwellings. And I'll be one of the movers of that if you need one. But But I just wanted to say I'm impressed, Mr. Henry, by a lot that you've said. And again, I'm speaking not against you. I'm speaking against short-term rentals in the area generally. And I say this from some experience, some observations that I've made. And the first observation is the photo that you just showed. You're obviously in front of your house. The street is practically empty, a 3rd Street and Ottawa Street. But take a picture of that on the weekend. I walk through town almost every day, and that's one of my routes is to go up 3rd. I live at the bottom of 3rd Street. I go up 3rd Street and turn on Taos, or sometimes go up to Silverdale. But the weekend parking is substantially different. And I've already brought it to the attention of the board that they should probably consider making 3rd Street a not a one-way, but a one-side parking to accommodate emergency vehicles.
May I say something on that?
Let's hold your comments until after Mr. Elliott's done.
Thank you. I believe that, and I think there are some good examples in town. I think it's unrealistic for anyone, town board or anyone, to assume that a house that accommodates more than a few people will use only one garage space and one driveway space for parking. Now, I am impressed by what Mr. Henry has said, and if he can govern that and keep it at that, that's fine. But it's pretty hard to do if you're not around and you've got renter people in there. The town requires businesses, hotels, motels, bed and breakfast to provide sufficient parking. And I just can't see a large home in a residential area like this with a crowded streets, at least on weekends, ignoring the fact that a lot of short-term rental properties being squeezed into our neighborhoods ignore the likelihood that loud parties and gatherings will occur, resulting in excessive traffic, excessive parking, and excessive noise, and probably excessive law violations. I'm again directing this to some past experiences, not personal, but observations. And I'm certainly not reflecting at all on you personally, Mr. Henry. And I still would say again, I look forward to meeting you sometime in the near future.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay.
Get out of the way.
And Lynette,
Yes.
I would hold all responses to the public testimony till the end. I know that's going to be tougher on you, Shane, and tougher on Eric and Leslie, but I'll hold the responses till all the public testimony has been given.
Right. So
Jerry just texted me. So.
Okay, that was my intent too. So we're all on the same page. Thank you. And who is up next, Jennifer?
Okay, next is going to be Kyle Rutten.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, hi there. So I just wanted to speak in support of Shane's application. Actually, I live right around the corner at 515 3rd Street, about 3 doors down from him. And a few things. First, I would say that, you know, if we're taking issue with the 7% cap that's been placed on short-term rentals in Georgetown, I don't think this is the venue to voice that concern. We have someone who is abiding by the law and trying to move or trying to apply, you know, within what's been set previously by the town, and to just arbitrarily move the goalposts on Shane as soon as he moves in and has gone through, you know, the cost and the headache of getting his ducks in a row here seems pretty unfair. A few things, you know, living on 3rd Street, I can say that yes, more cars show up on the weekends. However, it's not a dramatic number. And I live right across the street. And I live here full time. I work from home. And I don't see the parking thing being an issue. I just don't. And the other thing is that I live in just as close a proximity to the short-term rentals as the appealing party does. And I've been here for 3 years. I've yet to have a negative experience. I also sit on the promotions board and am aware of, you know, the struggles that town is consistently making on, you know, attracting tax revenue and spending that in a way that makes everyone prosper. Tax revenue is something that is important. I know it's something that isn't necessarily exciting to talk about, but we want to make sure that those avenues remain open. And to blockade sources of tax revenue, I think we need to approach that with caution and not taking the time to get to know Shane, to understand his intent with what he wants to do with the property, and instead just be very reactionary and escalate straight to a hearing such as this. It just feels heavy-handed, and it feels like it's probably, I mean, just from the way that he behaved in his statement, you know, it's going to put a bad taste in his mouth. That's the last thing I want to do as a member of the community and a neighbor to Shane. I'd like him to feel welcomed. So I realize, I know Tom said that it's nothing personal. He's just trying to protect the integrity of the town, and absolutely nothing but respect for that intent. I just wanted to say that I think, you know, we just have a disagreeing opinions there. I wanted to voice my support for Shane's endeavor here. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Jennifer, who's next?
Okay. All right, next we are going to have Dustin Schaefer.
All right.
And you can go ahead, Dustin, whenever you're ready.
You need to unmute
But it
yourself.
looks like you're, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I met Mr. Henry a couple months ago when he first moved to Georgetown. Very polite, quiet man. Over the past couple months, I've gotten to know Mr. Henry, and I'll call him a friend and a great addition to the Georgetown community. Mr. Henry told me he applied for the short-term rental license because it was one of the last ones available. He also told me he intends to spend most of his time here at 300 Taos House and use the license very little, if not at all. He felt comfort having that license in his back pocket in case something happened with his job or with him financially. It's sad that members of the community have gone around and started a witch hunt against Mr. Henry. People have questioned his lack of community involvement, investment to the community. Mr. Henry is at this house more than the residents that filed the complaint at 306 Taos. My family owned the house across from 306 Taos, and they're rarely there. In fact, I can't remember the last time I saw them. Mr. Henry has a garage that can easily park the 2 cars, as well as the parking outside of his house on the street. Parking's not an issue at the house. If the neighbors think parking is an issue for residents and EMS, maybe we need to look at parking rules for Ward 1. Option 1 is parking on one side of the street only. Another option is issuing parking permits to homeowners like other mountain communities do. How many of the concerned neighbors have actually talked to Mr. Henry? What happened to the days of actually just knocking on a neighbor's door when they're new to the community and saying hello? If they have an issue with Mr. Henry, addressing it face to face. How many times have they filed complaints on other short-term rentals in the area? 300 touts is not the problem. Mr. Henry was approved for this license. He got the license legally by the books. I request that the town of Georgetown not revoke Mr. Henry's short-term rental license. Shane, I wish your first taste of the Georgetown community was a little better. I'm happy you're here in Georgetown and look forward to having you here for many years. Thank you for your time, guys, and I hope you take my my words for Shane's not revoking his license.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next is going to be Nancy Hale.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Nancy.
Thank you. Mr. Henry, I am the representative of Historic Georgetown, and I am sorry that you felt that our letter was against you personally. It certainly was not. I have been up to your house. I left my card twice, and I haven't heard back from you. And so maybe that's a miscommunication problem. What I really feel is Durango said very clearly, and the Durango planner was someone that I knew, that 2 VRBOs per block really overwhelms a neighborhood. And that is really what I was going on. I had no idea until this evening that you would not be using the VRBO license every month constantly. And that kind of rang a bell for me that maybe we need to actually look at the percentage, of course. But if someone like you sees one last license, I can feel what you would do, that you want to grab it. But I really feel that maybe it's something in the long term that the town needs to look at. Not now, because there are no rules for that. And I also feel that all wards should be zoned for short-term rentals. So I am sorry, this is your welcoming to the most wonderful town. But the other really bone I have to pick with you is I am a renter and I take very good care of my house. So when you said renters actually will trash it, trust me, I don't. But I will definitely come up and meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy. Please come by and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you.
Thank you.
Do you have another?
Okay, next, yeah, the last one we have so far is Andy. And so I'm going to promote him.
Okay.
How's that?
Can you hear us?
We can
Andy?
hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Great.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Andy Wassman, live on 608 8th Street, my wife Ann, full-time. And I really want to support Shane primarily because Shane followed the rules. The town set the rules. Shane followed the rules. And like Kyle said, moving the goalpost doesn't feel right to me. If you want to change the rules, we can change the rules. I'll tell you, my wife is very supportive of limiting the short-term rentals. I'm personally supportive of things like Lakewood's put in. If you have a short-term rental, it has to be your primary residence. You can rent a max of 30 nights a year. That's what Shane's planning to do. This is full-time property. Maybe goes on vacation, he can rent the house out. I think that's great. So I'm not against the sentiment at all that we have a lot of rentals and we want to keep the community together. I'm actually very supportive of that. But what I'm not supportive of is telling somebody what the rules are, having them follow all the rules, and then changing the rules on them because you don't like the rules. Let's separate those two conversations, whether or not Shane was approved and then whether or not the rules are appropriate. So That's really it. I don't want to be a broken record, but thank you all for considering it and for listening to me. Happy to be here and thankful for all of you.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. Did anybody else get on the list, Jennifer?
Nobody else has typed into the chat that they wanted to speak. So if there is anybody out there, now be your time.
Okay, so it did, if I'm well, let's open it up to Shane first. Were there any of the public comments that you wanted to respond to? Oh, wait. I'm gonna do that after close of public testimony. So if we are, just to follow the steps here, I'm gonna close public testimony if we don't have anybody else lined up. Okay.
I don't believe we do. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Okay, let's go ahead and open it up. Shane, would you like to respond to any of the public testimony?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much for the kind words, everyone who spoke. And I believe it was Tom that said, Tim, was it Tim or Tom?
Mr. Elliott? Tom Elliott?
Yeah, that I would like to meet you, Tom. And appreciate you. Parking, my response to his parking comment. I have the corner lot here, so I have the space in front of my house and on the side of my house. And I'm here every single weekend. Always, always. Since I bought this house, I'm here every weekend. I will not miss a weekend in Georgetown. And if there's any cars parked in front or on the side of my house, they're my own, which I have 2 vehicles. So they're probably my cars or my guests if there are ever any parking spots taken in front of or on the side of my house. And yeah, I've got a maximum of 4 adults based on my off-street parking. So obviously I can't rent it to any large groups. If I do, it'd just be to probably a single family over the week of Christmas or something, when I could charge a premium for the rental. I don't want to give up my home to strangers, especially with virus stuff and with how fragile this Victorian home is. And then with the parties, if people are worried about parties, honestly, I think you guys might need to be more worried about me because I'm a musician. I like to play music. I like to play records. And I enjoy my time off, especially when I'm here on Sunday. It's my one and only day off. I work 60, 80 hours a week. So I enjoy my time here. And if anything, you guys probably would be more worried about my noise than any potential renter's noise. Although I'm not disrespectful to my neighborhood or my neighbors. So if I'm playing records too loud, just call me or knock on my door or come join me. I don't care. I mean, I'm a neighborly person and I really want to be involved in our community here. And I think that's it. I don't know. I think that this is, I want to respect all your guys' time, and I feel like this is sort of a waste of my time, your time. And yeah, I don't know. I've gone through all this process to obtain the permit legally and followed all the rules and paid the money, jumped through all the hoops to get it. And at this point, I'm just exercising my legal right to do it. I kind of could care less if I get this permit or not. Because that's not why I bought the house, for that purpose. I bought the house so I could live here. I want to be near Loveland ski area and have access to the city. And like I said, I've been trying to buy a home here for 10 years. So I'm here for life. Y'all are stuck with me. So I hope hope we can all be friends. And if I could contribute in any way or volunteer or do anything to donate my time or efforts to the community, I'm happy to. So nice to meet you guys. Thank you guys for letting me chime in, and hopefully we can all meet in person soon and
okay,
when we get back to normal.
All right. Thank you,
So,
Shane.
thanks, everyone.
Next, would you, Leslie or Eric, like to make any response to the public testimony?
Sure. We can say we appreciate the process that the town is going through. One of the commenters said this was heavy-handed, and yet it's the only process available to question a permit. You submit an appeal after you've been told by the town that it was approved. We apologize that we haven't met Shane either. We were there for 2 full days over the 4th and outside working in the yard for over 12 hours, but we didn't see that he was there at all, so we're sorry I didn't meet him at that time. I think that taking pictures of the corner and saying there's no parking problem in Georgetown is a little short-sighted. We've lived there for 9 years, and on the weekends there's a large amount of cars that park on Taos especially, and it does create a hazard, such as when the house next to formerly Malcolm's house caught on fire, and the EMS has a hard time getting in there. So the view that Shane has provided us tonight is not the common view of the parking issues in that area. And
I disagree. My neighbors that live kitty corner disagree as well.
Shane, let them speak, please.
Yep. Well, we've been there for 9 years on weekends frequently and have experienced that. So we hope the selectmen will take all these issues into account and make the best decision they can for the town moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Shane, did you have something to respond to that?
No, just that the parking thing, talking to my neighbors who live at, I want to say, I don't know if that's 306 3rd, or it might be the 500th block. It's the house kitty corner from me. They've never had any issues with parking or with parking being overrun on this corner. It's not a busy corner. I'm not sure what people are talking about with it being a busy corner.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next, we have an opportunity for staff to respond to questions from the public. I didn't really perceive any questions, but if anybody's got some comments, either Kent or Jerry. Jerry.
Members of the board, I don't have comments on the substance of what you're going to decide. That's absolutely your decision, and I have no opinion on whether you grant or deny the appeal. But I will say that a short-term rental license is not a guaranteed right. They are limited, like liquor licenses are limited. We know that because there's a right to appeal that grant of a right. If it were an absolute right, then there would be no appeal. You just finish with administrative process and it would be issued. Similarly, there's really not a role for the Fair Housing Act in this decision. I'm very familiar with that act and it's in my practice quite a bit. And the town has made its short-term rental licensing application process available to everyone. The applicant, Mr. Henry here, has availed himself of that right, but within the context of how that right is described in your code. And of course, your code specifically grants the ability to apply and specifically grants, in this case, the Britons and anyone else, the right to appeal. In the end, it's your decision, so it's not something that's compelled in terms of an outcome, either for Mr. Henry or for the Britons. And I wanted to make sure that the board heard that from me. Whatever decision you do make, I'll be asking you to direct me to prepare written findings as I commonly do. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Kent, any comments from you? None? Thank you. Okay. We will now close the public hearing. It is 7:15 p.m. and open up discussion for board deliberation. I'll go ahead and kick things off. Just as a little bit of background, my recollection of why we set a 7% limit on the number of short-term rental licenses in each ward was because when we put these regulations in place, we already had short-term rentals that had been operating. We just needed to, as we established the short-term rental program and passed the regulations, we needed to take into consideration those that were already in operation. And if memory serves, I believe Ward 1 was already right at that 7% amount. Ward 3, I believe, was either at it or very close. Ward 2 wasn't, but it seemed to be fair in that it wouldn't require anybody who was currently at that time operating a short-term rental to have to give it up. And as it's set up, when that number is reached and that limit is reached, anybody else who is interested in obtaining a short-term rental can go on to a waiting list. And it's my understanding from talking to Jennifer that Ward 1 has some folks on the waiting list. Ward 3 has a lot of people on a waiting list. Ward 2 has available short-term rentals because we haven't reached our maximum 7%. So just wanted to frame that in why we established the 7% initially when we adopted that regulation. We didn't get any more specific than having it limited to 7% by ward because we needed to make this easy for staff to administer, and the fact that we built in the parking restrictions that you had to have off-street parking to go with it seemed to encourage a limitation on some of the properties that would not then be eligible. If they had no off-street parking, it's not eligible for a short-term rental. As I see it, and that's exactly why Kent, when he approved the short-term rental for this property, put the limit of people and cars on how much off-street parking there was. So I think unless there is a problem with that not being adhered to, and there are problems reported to our police force, or at the renewal, if there are objections, then we should reconsider. But at this point, I think the limitations are there to try to keep the number of guests limited to just those who can park in the off street. And I personally don't see any reason to deny the permit. I don't see anything in our regulation that would lead us to want to deny that. All the rules were followed, in my opinion, and I think it should be approved. I think the appeal should not be granted. So I will pass it off to whoever would like to speak next.
Oh, I'll chime in.
Thank you, Rob.
He went through all the hoops. He's not going to have Sturgis on Town Street. He's actually playing right into all the naysayers' hands because he's hardly going to rent it. He's not even going to contribute to the parking lot. So he's basically playing into the glass half empty folks. So in other words, this guy, by getting this short-term rental agreement or short-term rental license, he's doing you guys a favor. Imagine the glass, if you wanted to be glass half empty, imagine if somebody south of his expectations or your expectations got that license. So in other words, Shane's doing you a favor if you want to look at it that way.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Who would like to speak next? Tim?
Yeah, one of the comments was that the 7% amount of homes in Ward 1 is grouped in that small area, but there's nothing in the regulations that say anything about having to have spacing in between the STRs. So that comment, I think, didn't bring any light. I do agree. I went by and I looked, and 3rd Street in there, especially across from the Centennial Mill by 300 Taos, the road's wide. There was a couple cars parked on the opposite side of the street from the Centennial Mill, and there was still plenty of room to get through there. On Taos Street, there's plenty of road width there. I know we're not discussing parking on the road, but I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't see any problem with road width at all. And I don't think this is the right venue to really discuss or try to change the 7% number for the amount of STRs in each ward. And therefore, I'm really in favor of denying the appeal. I think that Mr. Henry should have his license, and so that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Who would like to be next? Mary?
So I agree with you, Lynette, and Tim. I don't see that there's really any grounds for not allowing Shane to go ahead with his permit application. I would like to suggest perhaps outside of this that we address the short-term rentals with an ad hoc committee, but that would be at a later time or after we make the ruling on this particular one. So I'm in favor of him keeping his permit, his application. However, I would like some clarification probably from staff, just on a comment that was made. If we have a wait list, which was my understanding that we had them in a couple of wards, and yet the applicant recently purchased this home and applied for the short-term, the one permit that was available. And not, Shane, I'm not trying to penalize you for that, you know, you got it. But did the town follow up on that wait list prior to, you know, proceeding on this application? Don't answer that. So I'm in favor of him continuing with his application or his permit, denying the appeal. And I guess I'll leave some of my other questions for after we make that decision.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
So Lynette, this is Paul.
Yes.
When I was reading through this packet and saw all the negative letters, I was thinking, oh, great. Here we got a Denver investor that's going to buy this house and short-term rental the hell out of it. But after hearing everything and seeing Shane's presentation, I've realized that's not the case. And Rob brought up a good point that now this short-term rental license is going to somebody who's basically saying they're going to live there and barely rent it. It was just to have something in his back pocket. Well, now we kept that short-term rental out of a potential investor that would rent it to make money. So I'm also would like to deny the appeal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul. John or Keith?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I mean, this brings up parking issues in that ward for sure. And we need to look at that later on. It's been suggested a number of times, maybe some sort of permitting or hang tags or something that would allow, that problem to kind of be managed a little bit. I don't see any problem with anything that was, in his application, and I'm all for going ahead and letting him have it. But I would like to look at short-term rentals as we said we would when we did it, a few years ago. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, John. Keith, anything to add?
There we go.
Here we go.
I kind of agree with John in that when we set this up, I do remember we talked about limiting proximity within a certain block. I'm not sure why that didn't get done. I would really like to suggest that we sit down at some point and look at spacing. You can't have 2 or 3 on the same block. It just doesn't work. I think some of the negativity about the short-term rentals in general are that there's quite a few places that have been designated party spots. I certainly hope that 300 Taos does not turn into that. If Shane's going to live there most of the time, I applaud him for that. However, the fact that there's one right across the street, it's a problem. We need to look at the physical spacing, and we need to come up with a plan to address that. It's been my experience personally, and talking to a number of people in town, the weekend happens and every party animal known to exist descends on various short-term rentals in town, wreaks havoc, causes parking issues, causes too much noise, too much pot smoke. If Shane can keep that under control, that would be a good thing. But I think we need to really look at evaluating some things I think we missed initially when we set this up. I would be in favor of having a moratorium on any additional Ward 1 applications being approved or licenses being renewed until we have time to sit down and sort it out. My concern is specifically the area south of 6th Street, where the congestion is a problem. And I would beg to differ with those that see no problem. I've seen it for years, like continually on the weekends, or God forbid if it's a holiday. So I'm not going to raise a big fuss about this, but let's do a moratorium on any additional renewals or licenses granted until we have time to sit down and figure it out in a reasonable way. I would like to see the short-term rentals reduced in Ward 1 as per the request of HGI and many others. We need to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Keith. That is a question for another time. So,
sure it is.
Okay, thank you. All right. So did anybody on the board have another comment, or are we at the point where we need to consider what action might be taken?
Did you ask Tim, Lynette?
Yeah, Tim spoke. Okay. So, in the document that Jerry prepared for us, or Kent, I don't know which, but we have some possible options. One is to approve the appeal. One is to deny the appeal. and one is to deny the appeal of the license, but direct staff to place additional conditions on the license. So is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make that
Yeah.
motion.
Mary?
I'd like to deny the appeal of the short-term rental license application for 300 Taos. However, I would like to clarify or place additional conditions on the license that it doesn't allow any on-street parking. Right now, the application says just on Taos or 3rd Street.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion? Go ahead, Kent.
You're muted, Kent. Kent, you're muted.
I'm looking for the approval. It was no on-street parking allowed on Taos or 3rd Street. That is part of the approval with conditions so far. I mean, the board can reiterate that, but.
I think, well, Mary, do you want to restate your motion? I think you stated it somewhat differently.
So deny the appeal of the short-term rental license application for 300 Taos and to further restrict that no on-street parking on any street is permitted for any short-term renters. I don't know how else to say this. I mean, so if somebody parks a block away is my point, or 2 blocks away.
It's a proper motion.
That car in the driveway, they better not move it. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what she's saying. She's saying,
If we find that car parked anywhere in town, we're gonna have it towed, ticketed.
Okay, Rob, hang on just a second. Just 1 second. Would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to deny the appeal of the short-term rental license application for 300 Taos Street, but to direct staff to place additional conditions on the license. And that additional condition was no on-street parking anywhere for short-term renters. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Jerry?
Yep. Would the maker of the motion and the second agree to add to the motion to direct the town attorney to prepare findings for the police judge to sign?
Certainly.
As amended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, for any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Let me just ask something. I'm only clarifying, if somebody rents that on a short-term basis, there's 2 cars in the driveway and somebody has some friends over, are they allowed to park in front of that address?
Somebody else could.
Okay.
I mean, like if they wanted to go visit you.
And there's one thing I'd like to add, please. If Shane Shane is allowed to park on the street, and his friends are allowed to park there.
Yes.
It's only the short-term rental people that can't.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that goes for all short-term rentals. None of them can have off-street parking. I mean, on-street, sorry.
On-street, sure.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
and
I didn't know that was a
that's-
condition of all the licenses.
And that's really the only reason that I'm clarifying it, because it states 2 streets on the application, on the conditions, and it should just have said no on-street parking allowed. So.
Well, that's already in the license, though, isn't it? I mean, I'm only saying to clarify, it's only specified in the license that there's no on-street parking for any short-term rental.
Right, but it was
Renter. is what
Indicated
she said.
under certain conditions. When the permit was approved, it was approved with conditions and that parking was addressed. So if it hadn't been addressed, it wouldn't be an issue, but because it was addressed, that's why I'm making it an issue. Potato, potato.
Sorry, got it. No, it seems a little restrictive to me, but it seems like it's consistent verbiage throughout all short-term rental licenses.
Okay. All right. Okay, anybody else have a further discussion, comments? I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the motion as it's been stated, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Welcome, Shane.
Welcome, Shane.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I know this was a lot of ridiculous stuff, but I hope we can all be friends and get to know each other eventually.
All part of the process. So,
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Take care, y'all.
You too. All right, now we move on to agenda item number 2, which is emergency ordinance number 2, series 2020, amending section 9.40.050 concerning open containers of alcohol within the following parks in Georgetown. And I'm going to let Jerry start us off, I think.
Thank you. Please judge members of the board. You had asked at your last meeting that I prepare this ordinance as an emergency ordinance. So it's a single reading and if adopted tonight could be effective immediately. And the code has a code section prohibiting open containers, and that's pretty common. Cities across the state have open container laws, and then that's usually accompanied by a set of exemptions. And you'll notice that the existing exemptions are 3 in the present code. Public areas authorized by a liquor or beer license or special event permit. Typically, you'll see that occasionally in a special event permit in a given location. Private events, for example, private event on a town-owned property, private wedding or something, where you rent the park for a private wedding, that sort of thing. Private business where it's not open to access by the public. Again, this is open containers that aren't within the scope of a licensed premises for a regular beer, liquor license. What the board asked me to do would be to make an exception also to the open container law for Georgetown parks or a park. And so I wrote that, and you'll see that there's some blanks right at the bottom. Oh, I'm sorry. I just knew that my dog would be quiet all the way until now. Let me put her in another room. Oh, well, I guess I joined Paul, don't I? With that, yeah. In any event, there's room for some discussion, debate, if you're interested in doing the ordinance at all, which is up to you. And what I thought was appropriate, if you do choose to think about opening up or allowing open containers so people bring their own beer and open it up and walk around in the park. That's really what this would allow. So I think the discussion for you is threefold. One, do we want to go there at all? If we do, which parks, and should there be some time frames? And if you go there, I would seriously suggest that, and I'm sure the marshal would have an opinion about that, because where there are these allowances in other public spaces throughout the state, there usually is a sunrise to sundown, or there's some set of hours so that you do not have a cake party in the park at midnight on a given night. That's the kind of a thumbnail sketch of what the law presently provides and what you asked me to provide for you as a vehicle to have this discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Because he's sort of introduced your probable comment, I would call on Marshall Williams to make a comment if he has one.
Good evening. I imagine we're still talking about the 6th Street. One thing I did read in the proposed ordinance, and I don't know if I'm just not reading it correctly.
No, we're talking about parks, not 6th Street. 6th Street is later.
So two
different
things.
agenda item.
I
This would be Whirland Park.
Look closer. I'm sorry?
On Strauss.
This would be
Okay,
Strauss
we're
Park.
talking only Strauss Park?
Well, probably. The discussion that was had that gave rise to this ordinance was how about open container in Strauss Park? Got to have an ordinance for that. Separate agenda item, resolution on your agenda later to allow open container in 6th Street. So I'd reserve that conversation until then. This is parks, and it was Strauss Park that was the poster child that gave rise to the ordinance.
Okay.
So Strauss Park, comments on that?
Comment on Strauss Park. Strauss Park specific is, I'm not sure what the benefit will be. However, I don't see that being our biggest problem with the limitations on time. I see the concerns of being able to enforce the restrictions. I don't want to use the little adage, when you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. But if it allowed Strauss Park, if it allowed 6th Street, at some point there is a restrictive boundary where I'm not certain how that's going to be enforced. That's one concern that we have on this issue. Being able to allow to consume alcohol in Strauss Park specific, I don't see as detrimental to the town, to the safety, to a lot. It could lead to it, obviously. Anytime you mix alcohol into a recipe, you're going to have potential problems. If you have somebody going there and their main focus is to drink as many beers as they can while the rest of the family shops, and then, like I said, alcohol can be a contribution to a problem. But beyond that, I don't see this as a venue where that's going to be our biggest problem. It gets a little broader when we do get to 6th Street. My big concern were if this was a stepping stone to all of a sudden, well, why can't we add alcohol to City Park, to Whirland Park, and allow it there? And the next thing you know, we're going to be going to what is considered a park is Georgetown Lake. And we recognize from previous incidents that these are problems. Those parks should be for families and children, and alcohol should not be a component of that. But the short answer to your question and the direct answer to your question is not certain who is going to benefit, but the objections to Strauss Park are not significant.
Would you have a recommendation for the hour limiting to certain hours, and what would those be?
The businesses currently that are open or available that would access Strauss Park are mostly daytime businesses which close 6 to 7 p.m. The ones that stay open closer to 9, 10 or beyond p.m., those are the ones that would be the concerns. So I don't think even when Lucha's is fully operational again in a business, if this is still the rules, if this is a temporary rule when the streets are closed, it's much less of a concern. If it's a rule when we have open streets again, it raises another element of concern, because these people are going to be leaving businesses. They bought their liquor, which they know they're allowed to walk out. So to walk out, walk across the street, which for every business that would provide liquor would be walking across the street. On into the season changes as it gets dark. Different kind of parties happen after dark. You know, that's the polite way to put it. The level of alcohol consumption increases and the level of participants change. So I don't know if I have a direct answer on what would be appropriate. Probably anything past 7 p.m. would be pushing the envelope and not benefiting any businesses in the downtown area. Usually it would be to the contrary.
Okay.
As I said, I'm not certain where the benefits of this adjustment in the rules really lie. If they think certain businesses are going to do better and it's going to help the town, that would be great if that were actual, and especially if that developed. But with what we're looking at right now, we have one business downtown that's selling liquor or alcoholic beverages. And the benefit of that, I don't think is going to be that significant when they seem to be operating as best we can within the current climate.
Okay. Thank you, Marshall Williams.
Thank you.
I guess, is there anybody on the board who would like to, well, let me ask a question also. So if we were to allow this in Strauss Park, just as an example, would that open up, there's been some talk about renting the booths in Strauss Park to various vendors. Would that make it easier for those vendors to sell alcohol? Obviously, they would need a liquor license to be able to sell.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking outside the, the reasons for having it available in Strauss Park.
Well, yes, in the sense that then you'd have sort of a kind of a modification of premises in a sense already in place, which would amount to the boundaries of the park almost. But you're right. To sell liquor by the drink, this, as stated, you can bring your own beer to these 4 locations if you had a park, having nothing to do with buying alcohol by the drink and then walking out of a business onto it. So it would make it a little easier probably for me if I were a vendor at Strauss Park to be able to say to the board, hi, I want to modify my premises to include serving at my counter here and letting people consume in Strauss Park. At the same time though, modification of premises, you typically need to have some control over the exterior perimeters of that premises for sale to juveniles, for lots of good reasons. And when we get to the discussion on 6th Street, allowing alcohol on 6th Street doesn't mean that that's a giant modified premises. Individual bars, taverns will have to ask to be out there, and we'll have to do some sort of fencing or tape, et cetera, to control that. So I guess the answer to the question, it will come back to the board in any event for a modification of premises, or at least to Kent to decide that. And it probably would make it slightly easier to say yes, but it's not a lock that a modification of premises for sale of alcohol by the drink would be allowed to go out into the park. How's that?
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Yeah, and that does also bring up a question that I've been asking, which in my own mind was, does the modification of premises require that a perimeter be designated that within which, for instance, Luch's food truck, do they have to keep the the patrons who they sell a drink to within a certain designated perimeter? Or can they spread out to any table, any place that, you know, is available to sit?
No, because again, it's no different than if I've got a bar and restaurant and I want to start serving on a patio, and that's not presently a licensed area. When that comes up, significantly, what is always in front of the liquor licensing authorities is, okay, what's the perimeter of this patio? And is it permeable, or is it sort of established, and you know where the entrances are, and there's control by the licensee over where because they're responsible for people being overserved in that area, for juveniles being served or not in that area. And so you got to have control. And now the Liquor Enforcement Division and some of the governor's orders, and we'll get to this when we talk about 6th Street, have been a little more permissive about what constitutes a reasonable barrier. Because in the times of COVID, and they've lightened up a little bit, but that just underscores that there needs to be a barrier, and you have to have control over where all the bottles go, and you collect them, and because if there's no control, then my 16-year-old kid just walks up to whoever it was that bought that beer and gets it. And so the sale of alcohol by the drink is really a different animal, of course. Allowing open containers of persons that have owned their own sealed drink and want to take it to Strauss Park.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So can I just ask a quick question or clarify something?
Yes.
So again, we're using the example of Strauss Park. By continuing on this path, we're saying, and I'm going to pick on Cooper's on the Creek because they're not on the main drag. Someone can do takeout. If we allow alcohol in Strauss Park, someone can take out from a restaurant off-site, or they can pack their own picnic and bring in their own whatever beverage and sit down in Strauss Park and consume that without any violations, right? And so we would be encouraging patrons to do that, and then hopefully they go on their way and they start shopping in our shops and dispose of all their stuff correctly. That's what we're talking about for Strauss Park right now, right?
That's exactly right. That's a good example of how allowing open container in Strauss Park could be used. And you're right, when Cooper's would sell that drink, they have to sell it to take off the premises sealed. I think there's a little tape or seal or something that Liquor Enforcement Division has approved. And you pack that along with your lunch, as you say, or your picnic. And you take that to Strauss Park and you open it up and you enjoy it. And that is one thing that could happen and be allowed, and if this ordinance were passed.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, what about the person who wants to bring a cooler of beer that they buy at the discount liquor store for $12 for a 30-pack and go sit in Strauss Park with the 3 of their questionably aged persons, where there is no oversight to check their IDs, to see if they're compliant, and they're going to be the least likely to worry about non-manned restrictive barriers, and it could get carried away from there. So just to play a devil's advocate on where does this end and where is the benefit again?
They could do, that's absolutely right. They can do that too. And let me distinguish though, that set of activities, both the people that bought a nice mixed drink at Cooper's and the people that brought the keg to Strauss Park, that's, what they bought and brought there. That's a slightly different animal than than buying a drink that's open or being served a drink that's open within a licensed premises that's been modified to include part of 6th Street. That's and that's where you do have control because that's a feature of the liquor license. But the marshal is right that this ordinance would allow both the people buying a drink at Cooper's and bringing it and the people buying the keg or whatever and bringing it to Strauss Park. And there isn't the same kind of control. I agree. That's probably why open container laws in cities are pretty limited. You know, there really are the places you can walk around with an open container that you didn't get from a liquor by the drink bar are really pretty limited for that reason, I think.
Hey, Lynette, this is Tim. I'd like to
Yes,
make
Tim.
a comment.
Thank you.
I think I have to agree with Randy. I don't really see the benefit. I don't like the idea of somebody being able to bring their own beer, alcohol, whatever into the park area. I don't like that, and I don't think I'd be able to go along with that. Now, I think buying a beer at like Guanella Pass Brewing or Lucha or something that's right there in the immediate area, and being able to go over and sit down outside if you want to, or sit at one of the picnic tables, I think is fine. But I just don't care much about the idea of being able to bring in your own liquor.
And with that concern in mind, and I don't take issue with the persons buying their beer at Guanella Pass Brewery, or if Lucha's becomes available, but somewhere there should be an authority with something on the table saying, okay, I'm the one that can get in trouble if this starts happening. You're not allowed to go buy your beer and take it into Guanella Pass Brewery and consume it. But here we're give them a broader area for their beer to be consumed. So there's some issues here where without some kind of restrictions, and I'm not sure where they can come from. I think it needs a lot more design before it's just signed off on to address all of the possibilities, or you can never address all of the possibilities, to address the blatant concerns.
Okay. My recollection, just I'm going to interject, is that one of the reasons this was brought forth was because some restaurants have no outdoor seating, some have limited outdoor seating, and as Mary mentioned, because people in the summertime when the weather is nice, they want to sit outside. There have been times when it was requested by particularly Cooper's on the Creek to make this a possibility, so that people could get their food to go and their drinks to go, and have a place in town that it was okay to open up their picnic lunch and open up their drinks and enjoy those and be outside. Just wanted to mention that. And I guess if I'm not mistaken, a liquor store, which we have one in town, isn't allowed to sell alcohol to anybody who's obviously already inebriated. So I would hope, that doesn't prevent somebody bringing it from wherever their home city is, but there is some control, but it's removed if the liquor was purchased at a liquor store versus a restaurant that is in close proximity to Strauss Park or where we're in town. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And absolutely, I support the restaurants being able to participate in this kind of activity. I'm just saying that the restrictions attached to it need to be more defined, because all the traffic that we regularly discuss coming off of Guanella Pass, as they look over and see the traffic on the highway and say, we've got a cooler of beer right here, let's go into that park and pull in here to this parking lot, go into that park and finish it and let this traffic clear off, doesn't benefit anybody in town, especially if they become a little too rambunctious. If it gets too many people, I don't know how long social distancing is going to be an issue, but currently it still is.
Okay.
So the timeliness might not be the best, and at least the due diligence of making sure we're going to do this correctly might not be there yet.
Okay. Thank you. Any other people on the board have a comment? Yes, John.
I'd like to support Cooper's. I just don't see how that we can run enforcement with Strauss Park, or any of the other parks. I know when Troya's restaurant was trying to figure their thing out, they went to the library board and got permission to use that area for outside seating. The restrictions we put on them were like, a restaurant. They had to make sure they managed their spot and have policies to cover, what eventualities could happen. Somebody got run over, I guess. But I don't really think I'm really happy with having alcohol in the parks without some sort of management.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to clarify, I'm for this opportunity for our businesses and limiting it to just Strauss Park, even if we're only doing it for the remainder of the period through Labor Day. We're talking a month here. Yes, there's the opportunity that, as the police are indicating, the people are going to be coming down from Guanella Pass and stopping and finishing off theirs. But I think where we're already questioning the amount of enforcement or supervision in a situation like this is going to be tough, saying you can walk across the street if you purchase it at Guanella Pass Brewery, and that's okay, but you can't walk in there with your PBR and have it. At least we're seeing it, as opposed to, and I'm sure the officers, when they're patrolling the lake or anywhere else, I would think that most of the people are trying to conceal the fact that they're drinking an alcoholic beverage as opposed to having it out in the open. And so we're talking 35, 40 days. It gives us this opportunity for the different, anyone, we're still encouraging people to come to our town, to stay a while. And if it takes a glass of wine or a beer to do it, and we're talking daylight hours, I'm totally for the 7 o'clock curfew on alcohol consumption in Strauss Park only. I think it's an opportunity that's worth exploring for the remainder of our summer season.
I can't help but agree with Mary as well. I mean, the idea that we could actually open up those booths and use them other than Christmas market would be fantastic. I mean, can you imagine if, I don't know if this ever crosses anybody's mind, but if you get some artisan or somebody like that in one of those booths, you never know, he might be looking for a storefront somewhere and he's just testing the waters in Georgetown. It's just like the food truck thing. I know a lot of food, well, I don't want to misspeak. I know one food truck that went from a food truck to a brick and mortar in Wheat Ridge. And that can happen in Georgetown, but we just have to allow them in so that they can see that this is someplace that they may or may not thrive in.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, this is Paul. I live right next to two parks. And my concern is if we open up Strauss Park, there's the enforcement issue. And does that open the door for City Park and Whirland Park? If people, they're visiting town and they see that they're allowed to drink in Strauss Park, now they want to go play volleyball in Whirland Park. They stop by the liquor store and pick up some beer. Is that where we want to go? I mean, that's a concern of mine because I live by these two parks, but I understand trying to support the business. It's just a kind of a gray area for me right now.
Well, Paul, I've been in Whirland Park with a bunch of guys playing volleyball, and somebody bought a 30-pack of PBR. And was there? I mean, Randy, John, were there any citations ever issued?
We have addressed that. We have addressed that.
There was a disturbance.
Pardon
Yeah,
me?
we've
There was
addressed
a
it
disturbance.
twice. We've addressed that twice. And we will start issuing citations from this point forward.
Yeah, it's becoming a problem. The parks, like I said, are families and for children. They're not really to have these adult parties. And most municipalities that I've been part of, metro area and in between here, because I've done this for a lot of years, has restrictions. There was a period of time where Denver had very limited parks that allowed 3-2 beer. 3-2 beer doesn't exist anymore. And I know even as a family reunion, way back in the mid-90s, we were part of receiving a citation from a community where I lived and worked. It was somewhat embarrassing. I had to step back. I couldn't ask for a little bit of consideration because it wouldn't have been appropriate, but they knew the rules going in. They signed the permits for the park. The problem with the volleyball game hasn't led to big fights. It's led to a lot of litter. It has absolutely done that, where there were way too many empty beer cans, and it's just not an appropriate venue for that kind of activity in the nature of the park, because pretty soon, and I'm always asked, do you ever see people intoxicated misbehave? And pretty soon it leads to it. So I wouldn't want my kids to take the dogs to the park and let them run around and play while this group of adults is consuming their 30-pack, which between 10, 15 people is not going to create the biggest problem, but it leads to it. When they think we need another 30-pack here and let's sit down here, and it gets heated. Sports, alcohol, all of that. And then where do we stop? We let them start doing it in Whirland Park and let people walk their dogs. We have a lot of conflicts at Whirland Park. That really is an area we have a lot of conflicts, because one person's dog looks sideways at another, or is too rough, or they're too rough on their dog. And like I said, it's a big number of conflicts at that particular park. If we add alcohol to the recipe there, and I certainly don't want it to be part of the recipe at City Park with Foster's Place, with the family picnics. And City Park has become a destination point. If they think it's a destination point where they might as well bring alcohol because, well, we can't drink in our park in Westminster, here we can here. So that is my greatest concern about an ordinance of this type or a resolution, is it being a stepping stone to, well, why can't we do this here? Is working fine at Strauss Park. And I'm with Mary Smith with, we're only looking at doing this a short time. If that is not going to be time for it to become a problem. I'm looking at the long term. And it's just the nature of what we have to look at, is not what is this going to do next weekend or for upcoming weekends before it's even recognized as being available, it'll be over with. But then if we say, well, it worked well next year, we open it up again early in the season and, well, let's give it a try at the other parks. You're just setting us up for a lot more work than we really need. And you're setting the town up for some potential liability for even allowing it.
All right. Keith, did you have anything to? No? You're mute.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not muted.
Now you're.
I think the park is not a place for alcohol to be served. I don't think that we need to be policing parks any more than or watching over those that are in the park and potentially intoxicated. So I kind of agree with what John said. Yeah, we don't have the resources to devote to babysitting.
Okay. All right. I think we heard from everybody. So I guess we're at a point where if someone would like to make a motion to approve this ordinance, let's plug in some whatever restrictions you want to plug in, specify the park, specify the hours. Is anybody ready to make that motion, or?
Lynette, can we make sure that any of our audience members don't have any comments to weigh in on this? I don't know if they do, and I don't know if everyone's been able to read the chat that on some of these comments, or if anyone else wants to come in live.
I haven't been. Yeah, if you'd like to hear from them, we certainly can.
Maybe they don't want to speak.
Well, it looks like there's some comments from Amanda, but she's relying on what appeared in the chat, which is difficult to actually make part of a public meeting.
You're welcome to read it if you like.
All right. So she starts off by saying, is there a way that we could use color-coded cups or special individual tables to show where the product came? Oh, labels, I'm sorry, to show where the product came from. And then she goes on to say, I'm sorry, I know I was certainly the most vocal, but I really believe that this would help all the restaurants out, Alpine, Cabin Creek, Guanella Pass Brewery, Lucha as well. We all just want to do the right thing, and we realize that our law enforcement works so hard and have nothing but respect for them and what they deal with in our town.
John, did we have any feedback from the Business Promotions Commission regarding Strauss Park on this, or haven't they had a chance to have a meeting that they weighed in on this?
They had a work session that I wasn't at. I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Well, I'll take the plunge if you want a motion.
If you'd like to make a motion, you certainly may.
See where it goes. Jerry, I might need you to help me out here. So I move to approve ordinance number 2, series 2020, an ordinance amending section 9.40.050 of the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning open containers of alcoholic beverages and declaring an emergency with the following stipulations: that open containers would be allowed in Strauss Park from the hours of 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week.
proper motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 2, series 2020, with the stipulations that it be allowed in Strauss Park from the hours of 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and on 7 days a week. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my
I oppose.
So if I'm counting correctly, that was 2 in favor and 4 opposed.
Oppose.
Opposed.
Opposed.
And 2
Opposed.
okay, so the motion is not passed. Okay. So then we have another one to consider, which Jerry prepared for us, which was a resolution of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown, Colorado, permitting public consumption of alcohol beverages within the public right-of-way of 6th Street between its intersections with Argentine Street and Rose. The agenda lists Argentine and Griffith, so I was a little confused on the scope here. But let's open up the discussion.
Let
Yes,
me
Jerry.
make a quick staff report if I might. I apologize for the Rose Griffith problem. I think the intention was Argentina and Griffith. Is that right, Kent? Kent says yes.
Okay.
Okay, Kent says yes. That's my error. And of course, you can adjust this, the start and end points however you want to. You know, that's legislation. As the staff memo mentions, typically sale of alcohol by the drink, and now we're talking about sales of alcohol by unlicensed, liquor licensees, where that can be consumed. Typically, that's not allowed in public rights of way, but the governor's order allows that to happen so long as the local government permits it by resolution or ordinance. And so I drafted a resolution that would allow that. I'm glad we had the earlier discussion because it does mean that it's not an open container law on 6th Street like we were just discussing for Strauss Park. It's okay, if you've otherwise got a liquor license, you have the ability to apply for a modification of premises to extend that service area that you will control in a good way out into 6th Street, but you got to come in and make a modification of premises application to us. Today, if Luchas or anyone wanted to make that application, they wouldn't be able to at all because you haven't yet acted to even allow sales or consumption of liquor by the drink that was bought at a liquor licensee in the street. But this would open the door to people coming into you to ask for that. But if you pass this, then magically, I think I'm overstating the case, but I'm repeating myself. Magically, tomorrow, somebody buying a drink, at Troya's wouldn't be able to walk into 6th Street. It'd be tough for them to modify their premises to reach out to 6th Street, but laying that aside. So you'll notice I left some blanks again in this ordinance because you could certainly place additional restrictions even before somebody asked for a modification of premises. And clearly one may well be hours. If you pass this resolution, but you put in some hours of operation, 11 to 7, something like that. And that means if I had a liquor license and I came in to ask for modification of premises, it would already be limited to some hours even before I got to you. And that's, fine. I left a blank number 3 because I thought, well, there's more discussion at the board level on additional sort of universal, I guess that's the way to say it, universal limitations on any modification of premises that walked in the door. This gives you the chance to put some additional universal limitations. I'm not sure what those would be other than hours, but I wanted to give you a chance to think about it. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
So, Kent, did you have anything to add?
The reason that this came up is obviously because of Lucha's and the food truck on 6th Street, and they have submitted, although it hasn't been completed, we still have some issues with Lucha's regarding their application regarding modification for premise. But the other restaurant on the other end of the street, that's why there was some discussion regarding Happy Cooker, if they would ever want to pursue something. And that may be a separate issue if it ever come up. So, but as far as a block in between, there's nothing really there to engender. We really wouldn't want people to walk across Rose Street to get to the other. Might be a harder issue, especially with Trust Power.
It's hard to understand you. You're all fuzzy.
Okay.
Yeah, your sound is getting a little.
Sound's getting worse. It must be getting late in the evening and my sound's getting worse.
So.
Is that a little bit better now?
Yeah, a little.
Hey, Darth Vader.
So, however, it would also allow, if we were to add some more food trucks in that 6th Street pedestrian area, they would also be eligible to modify their premises.
Right.
So
go through the process, yeah.
Right. So I guess I'm in favor of, since I think that's going to benefit them, and I think their intention is to apply for a modification of premises, and we would also want, if a food truck, an additional food truck or more than one, were to want to set up and already had a liquor license and wanted to do the modification of premises as well, that this would set the groundwork to make it easier and quicker to do that. So just putting that comment out there. Anybody else have a comment or a question?
Yeah, this is Paul. How long does it take to apply for a modification? Like if you were to apply today, when would you possibly get it?
I can speak to that. The turnaround time is really quick. The state is really working with people, and it's only a couple days from what I've seen.
Oh, okay. Then that's not a non-issue.
Okay. Yes, John.
I'm in favor of this one for 6th Street. I think if it's tied to, their liquor permits, it's managed, and somebody is responsible. So I don't have any problem with this. In fact, I support it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion? There is a recommended motion in your packet, and then we just need to plug in things to fill the blanks if you so desired, if you had other conditions or stipulations that you wanted to add.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve resolution number 7, series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown, Colorado, permitting public consumption of alcohol beverages within the public right-of-way on 6th Street between its intersection with Argentine and Griffith Street between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday through Labor Day weekend, and be reevaluated at the following board meeting. The board meeting following Labor Day weekend.
Would that motion include the streets that are active? I mean, how does it break down? Is it just the closed streets on this closed portion of 6th Street?
Yes.
I'm good with that. I'd like to have the hours less though.
Less
Make sure.
hours than that?
11 a.m. to 7 p.m. was what I
11,
had said.
okay, that's great. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll second.
For a term of effectiveness, Mary, can we have a specific date so that we can plug that in and everybody knows? You said
September 7th. So through up to and including, however you want to word it, September 7th, which is Labor Day,
okay.
and
Okay.
be reevaluated at the September 8th board meeting.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 7, series 2020, with the stipulations as stated. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This one passes. Thank you. Okay, next we have an ordinance amending chapter 14.12 of the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning use regulations for the Clear Creek Channel. Kent, do you want to kick that off?
Try and hopefully not have a Darth Vader voice.
Ooh, a little bit.
The previous meeting, there was some information exchange regarding some folks tubing down the Clear Creek channel. It was directed to staff to prepare an ordinance for its consideration, which would prohibit certain uses, including swimming, kayaking, boating, and all those type of things along Clear Creek Channel, if you could, and its forks within town boundaries. And I put as the endpoint, and you can change the endpoint if you'd like, but the pedestrian bridge that's basically equidistant with Wolverine Circle, which doesn't exist except in dirt. And then also the first apartment building of the new apartment buildings at 1920 Argentine Street. So it's kind of in between those two places. Now you could have it at a different location if you wanted to. You could have it at the 15th Street Bridge if you wanted to. But we do allow tubing and watercraft on Georgetown Lake and Lagoon. So this would not affect that. It would just affect the channel south, basically, of the lagoon area through the town boundaries. And Jerry May can explain the ordinance itself and how it attaches to the code.
Okay.
That's pretty simple. There's already a set of sections dealing with the channel of Clear Creek, not allowing certain things there already. And so I just added a new prohibition on boating, swimming, and etc., and then listed them out. I think I got swim, kayak, boat, or tube. Not sure there's another way to do that.
Probably
maybe surf, but I left that out. And as Kent points out, if this ordinance is adopted, you would need to plug in an endpoint, however you want to articulate it. I think he did the job of me saying where that stops and people can start swimming, boating, tubing, kayaking. That's really a classic public policy legislative choice for you to make. If you choose to engage in the prohibition at all, and the prohibition came up because of safety concerns, as I understand it. And I don't know if the marshal has any additional comments around that. But that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Randy, do you have any comments?
No, I think it's a useful ordinance. And the problems we've had historically have been minimal, but they have been there. There's used to be a lot more different kind of groups that would go out with their what they call surfboards and wakeboards and do the same activities. Never been a strong issue, but it's definitely worth having on paper.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I personally think there's a strong argument for having this new restriction on the books. Clear Creek can be kind of treacherous even when it's not raging. And it also, if somebody does get into trouble in those sections of the channel, it's very difficult to do a decent rescue because it's all surrounded by private property. It's difficult to get in and take people out. So I like the whole idea of putting this on the books. Any other comments? Tim?
Yeah, I just have a question for clarification. Does this affect fishermen wading in the creek?
As written, no, it's swim, kayak, boat, or tube.
Okay.
And it does not go to the past up to the lagoon area. That's where it ends.
And that, yeah, that's where the fishing happens anyhow.
Yeah.
So Lynette, I guess you can still fish in your stretch of the creek.
Okay.
Fair question.
At our last meeting, we started to discuss the options of perhaps opening it up from 11th Street or 15th Street to the footbridge that we're referencing at Wolverine or 1920 Argentine. If we were to open it up from 11th, I mean, we have great water here and we don't use it. I mean, we've certainly seen more use on the lagoon and lake, I think, this season than I can recall for several years. I personally would not be opposed to allowing tubing from 11th Street to, you know, the mouth of the lagoon or whatever. It's a stretch that is fairly accessible. We all know that there's always going to be safety concerns. We all know that it's cold water, it's Colorado. You know, that it's kind of like, let the tuber be aware, and that's their issue. That's not, you know, we're not their moms to put on little fur coats on them. So I would like us to consider doing it in a limited area where we're not talking the low bridges and we're talking better access for whatever reason.
I can respond to that a little bit. I'm somewhat familiar about the full length of at least Clear Creek, not necessarily Leavenworth Creek, which has never really been an issue. The safest area, if we were to allow this activity, would be from 11th Street to 15th Street. When you get past 15th Street, there are a lot of different rock formations. The water gets very shallow, so at certain times of the year, and the footbridge has the most dangerous obstruction to where even our swiftwater trainers don't go up above that to begin their training, and as part of it because of the dangers of it. And being part of many decades ago, I don't want to make it sound like I'm some recent here to rescue people in the water, testing for swiftwater rescue. That section is an area that we did try using, and it's not used anymore as far as training purposes because of the rocks and the danger. And every single person that went in there was injured, which is another reason I don't do that.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Would anybody like to make the recommended motion
I'll make the motion. I move to approve ordinance number 3, series 2020, an ordinance amending chapter 14.12 of the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning use regulation for Clear Creek Channel on the first reading and post at 3 locations of the town's website. And I'd like to end the point to be directly west of Wolverine Circle and adjacent to the apartment building on 1920 Argentine Street.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 3, series 2020 as stated. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
I have a question,
Yes, Jennifer.
please. I'm sorry. Can John, can you repeat where the location you said?
Yes. It would be directly, the pedestrian bridge directly west of Wolverine Circle and adjacent to the apartment building at 1920 Argentine Street.
And adjacent, okay, to apartment building 1920 Argentine. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So if I was counting correctly, that was 5 for the motion and 1 opposed, right? Okay, thank you so much. All right, where are we? We are at the agenda item on Lucha's and Ophelia's, the evaluate the EQR discount, just to, since the fire had closed them, we were just updating that decision that was made at a previous meeting to see whether it gets extended or not. Kent, did you have anything to add?
I would just say that they're in the same condition that caused the first or the board action previously. I would request that the extension or the action be extended. And then it's whether you want us to keep coming back to you at a future month or to allow it when their businesses actually change and that the staff take care of the action at that time.
As far as I'm concerned, I would think it would be, I would be in favor of approving it to extend until they are able to re-inhabit the building and open up their businesses in the building again. But I leave it to you.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with Lynette.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm seeing nods. Shall we, did we take a motion last time and take a vote?
I think so.
I think we did. So let's formalize this. If somebody would like to make the motion, and
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and, let's see, how would I say this? Let Lucha's and Ophelia's EQRs continue at, is it 1 for each?
Yes.
1 for business, yes.
Continue on until staff decides that they're back in business.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the reduction of EQRs for Lucha's and Ophelia's to be 1 per business until staff determines they're back in business, fully operational again. And any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have the audit.
Yay.
shall we let Mary introduce that? Thank you. Is she still awake?
She may not be.
Barely.
I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Oh, no. We received the audit from John Cutler on Thursday, and we got it all tied into our financials. We're in a pretty good position this year, and in spite of everything, and it is due to the state by Friday, or on Friday, no later than Friday. So the water and sewer funds are very healthy, part of which is we received all the development fees for Bighorn Crossing, and we did not spend all of them. And part of those expenditures were done in 2018. That's why the big jump, that's part of the big jump in the water and sewer fund as far as balances go. I don't know, Kent, did you have anything else?
There could be a lot more said, but I'll leave it at that. Questions.
So
I wasn't very prepared to speak, so.
well, and I've seen a few audits over the years, but some of the newer board members may not have seen more than one. So if there are any questions for Mary or for Kent, please let us know. Okay.
And this is, as of December 31st, 2019. So that's the end point for that. And then Mary did provide you in the packets as well, a revised or a final, is like Mary likes to say, final January financial statements, and then final June financial statements. If you want any of those that are the months in between, you can certainly request, and we will provide them.
I did do just a single sheet, kind of a summary sheet of 3 years of revenues and expenditures by fund and by department in the general fund, just for informational purposes through June of 2020 also.
Mary and I discussed that, and we just thought it would be a little bit easier than basically a shorthand. You can find all the numbers that substantiate these numbers in the monthly financial statements, but this allows you a little shorthand on the 1-page sheet, and that we'll do that going forward at various months.
Okay. And that was that one page that was right after the 2021 budget calendar in the packet.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. If nobody has any further questions for either Kent or for Mary, thank you for doing such a good job presenting and working with the auditor to get this done. I would entertain a motion to accept the auditor's report. There's a recommended motion in the packet.
This is Tim. I'll make the motion, or I move to accept the auditor's report of the basic financial statements for the year ending December 31, 2019, and direct the auditor to report it to the state as required by July 31st of 2020.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the auditor's report of the basic financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2019, and direct the auditor to report it to the state as required by July 31st, 2020. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So we move on to staff reports or information items first. Budget calendar for 2021 budget is in your packet. Anybody have any questions or concerns? I thought it looked pretty good. And if we, it may be a little bit more challenging this year, just because of sales tax revenue losses or reductions and COVID-19 effects, but I think we can still get it done. And the schedule looks good, so it'll just be challenging. Do we need to formally adopt this or just go on? Okay.
Just the information.
Okay. So, and then, as Kent mentioned, you've got the updated financial statements for January and for June, with any changes that were necessary after the audit was done. So review that at your leisure. So then first thing on the staff item list is the COVID-19 emergency order update. I was asked by Matt Taylor here, who is on the census committee, whether anybody has a suggestion for a different location for that variable message sign that right now is on Argentine, right after you get out of the roundabout and head towards downtown on, in the gateway. So if we wanted to move it around a little bit to catch other groups of our population, that certainly can be done. If we wanted to suggest a change in the message, that works too. So
If I may, when it said wear a mask, help us stay open. I thought that was a really good message, and I noticed that was gone now. Is that by design?
I did mention that to Matt, and he said it can certainly be brought back if we want it to. I thought it was good to have that on the weekends particularly, and then the census message during the week. And it certainly is, it can be brought back. I thought it was a good idea. So thank you. Anybody else?
I think if we put a variety of messages on there, especially for people who are here regularly, it'll catch their attention more than if it's the same thing. But I do like the fact that the mask is addressed. I would suggest moving it perhaps further south, closer to town, only because when you have larger vehicles parking near that sign, it blocks the sign. And I notice that a lot on the weekend, people's bike racks and stuff, the sign gets blocked. So maybe it just needs to be relocated a little bit further down the street so it's not.
Okay. And then come up with a variety of messages so that it changes, so people pay attention and don't just tune it out.
Yeah, I don't know how often they have to program it, but I just think that would be.
Okay. And if you have suggestions for what the messages could be, I maybe funnel that through Kent, because he's the one that corresponds with Matt Taylor the most, other than me, who's in the same office building. So
something with humor usually catches people's attention. A limerick, perhaps.
Well,
we'll assign that to Keith.
We only have like 20 characters, but
sure. So
what we need to do though is catch Idaho Springs as far as the census goes. We're less than 0.5% behind Idaho Springs right now.
So any other COVID-19 emergency order issues?
The CARES funding for businesses, or the business part of that distribution, when the CARES agreement funding comes through, is proceeding. Fewer and fewer questions are left to answer about how that's going to occur. But I think we have one more meeting this week, Lynette, I think, with the other folks around the county about how that's going to occur. And then I think that'll be tidied up. But that's about it regarding COVID stuff.
So, okay.
I think that the slogan "mask it or casket" really ought to be brought up.
I like that. I like that. That's catchy.
It's a lot like, I'm not sure, but yeah, I like, it's catchy, definitely catchy. Oh, all righty. Any other COVID-19 concerns? All right, seeing none. As Kent said, the self-reporting time period is still going to continue, but they will start knocking on doors starting on Thursday. And so if you know of anybody who hasn't self-reported yet, encourage that. Georgetown stands at 50.1% of last year's estimated population. So we're doing well. We're ahead of the 2010 self-reporting level, and we can keep going. So keep encouraging it, and I'm hoping the frequent mentioning it and the variable message board will help things keep going. So anybody else have anything on consensus? Okay, and just so you all know, I'm sure you've all seen them, but the folks who are going around knocking on doors to actually help get the reporting completed, they're going to be fully identified. It should not be intimidating or frightening for the resident to open the door to them. They should be able to determine that it is a census person. So hopefully especially for somebody who doesn't have the capability to do the self-reporting on a computer, you can call in. There's a phone number to call in for self-reporting, but so this is just one other method to reach out.
I think John's got a fake ID.
I don't think that's going to work. They're going to be fully identified. So
I'm knocking on my door.
So, all right. They will leave calling cards if people don't open the doors, so that they know who it was. Looks like we're down to the research on Colorado Ranger assistance.
That must be me.
I believe it is.
I kind of missed the last meeting. I was off enjoying the 120-degree heat in the desert. So I'm not quite sure what we were looking for, but I can tell you everything up to speed on the Colorado Mounted Rangers, which are now called Colorado Rangers. Past number of years, they had legislation. They minimized their name and received some different status as far as their law enforcement certifications. I don't know if there were any specific questions, but I'll run down real quick how the Rangers work and see if that satisfies what everybody was looking for. They're long time, I think 150-year now, law enforcement agents sanctioned by the state, even though they are not state law enforcement officers. The most recent change is their law enforcement certification has been upgraded to they are regular all have to be regular post certified. That's police officer standard training certified police officers now. So they were not overly available for a period of time while all their personnel went through these academies, which are extensive. As part of their new operation, instead of being an entirely volunteer and making themselves available to the communities without any cost, they have adjusted that a little bit, started at $3,000 a year, and now starting with the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021, the cost to sign a contract with the Rangers is $3,900 per year. For that, they are available to you on availability basis on their part, combined with our need for them. They are not designed to supplement a police department, more so to be available for special events and emergencies. If it comes to mind that they were going to be used for regular patrol, that's really not available. You never know which Rangers you're going to get from event to event when you do contract for them to come out. And unfortunately, one of the stipulations based on this annual contract you sign with them for the $3,900 does not guarantee you who or the number, or even if, depending on their availability, if they are going to be able to satisfy your request for a person. Right now, they do have limited numbers because trying to get all of their staff post-certified has taken this number of years. They can only have so many seats in an academy. I'm certain, although I don't know the specifics, that the COVID restrictions have really created a little bit of a problem carrying on the academies, because that's happened everywhere in the state and country. Some things to note about the Rangers: we were a little hesitant to sign on with them. This will be our 8th, maybe our 9th year of having a contract with them, because we didn't know anything about them back in 2012. We researched it. It seemed satisfactory, but they work under the authority of the Georgetown Police. That's where they gain their authority while they're working. And also the Georgetown Police will be assuming liability for anything that happens regarding to what the actions they take while they're in our requested employment. So that was one of our initial concerns. We met a lot of very professional people with them, and they've had very few problems across the entire agency in the time frame that I've known them. They are not a reserve officer function. They are an auxiliary officer function. So really, they have to work with somebody for the most part, unless we get very lucky and find people that really want to be here, which we've had happen. But at the same time, they're entirely volunteer. So usually when they come to work, we'll buy them their meals. I haven't used any town funds to do this, but we've always made sure that we've taken care of them. 4th of July events, the barbecue has always taken good care of them. So it's never been a problem, but it's still a consideration. And that's one of the things that makes them happy to come to a town. They like working here. They like the people they're working with. And if they pretty much like the way they're treated. So that's the short and fast description of what the Rangers are. Since they started charging for their services, we have not had a contract with them. And this will be the 3rd year that they've done that. So it just seemed, for the few times a year that we did use them, we could take that same amount of money and contract for off-duty Clear Creek Sheriff's officers to come to work specifically for Georgetown, That's usually at a rate of $75 an hour per officer. It changes the liability factor involved, and they're already familiar. They have their vehicles. They're familiar with where they're at. So I'm not saying Rangers are a bad idea or a good idea. I'm just not certain they're the most viable plan that we can use right now. When we do need a large number of officers, if we have something different happening, they're definitely beneficial. But with our limiting our 4th of July activities, they did help on Slacker, and they were a great help, but we're not even certain when we're going to have special events again. So right now, to consider signing a contract for the year 2020, there really isn't any reduced adjusted costs since we're already in starting August 2020. And for 2021, we just kind of have to explore and see what our needs might be. So if there were other indications of what the Rangers were going to do for us, I might not be aware of them because I wasn't really overly participant in the previous meeting. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I think it was just, it was suggested as a possible option to try and, if it was available and workable, we wanted to explore it as a possible option to lighten the load on you and your officers. And if it's not really the right option to be looking at, then we'll explore other options. So appreciate you bringing that up. Yes, John.
I think it came up, I was thinking about it for the alcohol on 6th Street, if there was going to be an overload on the officers or Strauss Park or anything, but it sounds like other avenues would be better if we need them, like the sheriff.
I think I did some numbers. We can get about 30+ hours of help from the sheriff's department for the same amount of money we'd be spending.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Randy before we move on? Okay. So next, Mary requested an update on what's going on at 15th and Rose.
Got some good news today, or at the end of yesterday and really today. They did get the additional leak taken care of, and they say they will have it all taken care of tomorrow, and it'll be just a matter of backfilling tomorrow. And then I don't think he'll get done with backfilling tomorrow. That'll be Thursday. So hopefully Thursday, the hole will be, and he's going to take some of that dirt away and then bring the dirt from the school project to fill in the hole, because that dirt's pretty, and there's a gazillion utilities within that hole. So
okay.
They'd have a little bit more hand digging to do tomorrow to make the last connection that they need. So when he says hand digging, that's why there is a little bit of caution, but should be done tomorrow and then fill it in on Thursday. But hopefully that happens. And if not, it's time to kick butt regarding it. But that's what the update I have as of today. So.
And then are they responsible for the street repair once it's all put back together again? Or is that something that we take on?
Yes. Although, yes. And we're going to work out, we'll probably put millings in there initially, but then there are a few places that need a hot patch right now. We still have Banky up here in downtown that the two cross streets need, the two sewer lines needs the hot patch.
On Rose.
There's a couple places we have, and then of course that 15th Street. So that would be a pretty good combination to do, to get one contractor up here to do that.
Will we be able to use our asphalt zipper?
That's to take it away, not to put it back, but yes, we could use that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Sure.
Oh, one other thing. I did have a drainage issue in the 1500 block of Maine with the rainstorm on Saturday. Pretty serious one. And that area, and there's been a couple other areas that drainage is an issue. So we did have drainage from the road get into a house near that location.
Okay.
So once the staff we'll be probably talking with you very shortly about getting something accomplished drainage wise, even if it's just something in the short term. There may be a longer term project, but you guys realize that drainage is an issue in this town, continues to be. We need to start addressing some areas, that's for sure.
Keith, you were going to say something?
I was, but I was rudely interrupted.
I'm sorry.
I want to get it on the agenda coming up as soon as possible, that we address some of these issues in Ward 1 with regard to numbers, percentages, proximity with regard to the short-term rentals. It is a problem. It is very annoying to a lot of the people in Ward 1. And frankly, we need to get on it. So can we get that slated for the agenda next time?
I agree with Keith. I'd like to propose that we have an ad hoc committee. I would volunteer to either chair it or be on it, and to get some other representatives throughout the community, and not only look at Ward 1, obviously, but
every ward.
But it's been 4 years now. We've learned a lot, and we need to reevaluate our ordinance.
Okay. Would it be better to do a work session?
I think some direction from a work session to the committee would be helpful to the committee, of what things to
focus on,
or what, what kind of answers would they like to see from the committee. So.
Okay.
So I think that's essential. And like I said, not just for Ward 1, just over the whole deal. The other thing I'd like to bring up is I spoke to Coraloo, God, I don't remember which day, but she would like to see selectmen like pop in and check in with business owners downtown on 6th Street and close proximity, just maybe stop by and get their thoughts on how things are going. I feel like, I guess the meeting before last, I believe they felt like they were thrown under the bus. So it would be good to, I can't stop in for various reasons, but the rest of you can pop in occasionally and just check on people. I think they would feel better. And maybe be able to shed some new input on how we move forward. But those are only two things I have.
Okay.
I go downtown all the time. I actually am sitting around in Library Park having tacos from Luch's all the time, and I'm walking around. I don't know that nobody wants to approach me, but it's not like I'm unavailable.
Well, put yourself out.
I've gone in. The one thing that just kills me is that, Coraloo has been a part of this community for so long, and all I've ever heard from her, whenever an issue comes up, is negativity, and I feel bad for her because You know, I even hear it in some of your voices. All right, Cora Lou, go ahead. You know, and she loses her respect by just being negative about everything that's being proposed. I would like to ask her if she might be able to lend a positive note. I mean, if it's going to, you know, kind of coming in at a barbell, you know, if she's going to be negative on one end, maybe she can lend something positive towards, you know, on the other end. She's been in this town longer than a lot of us combined. I would imagine that she would have a lot of knowledge that really could help us, especially in a time when nobody's ever, you know, nobody's got any experience about how to work through a pandemic.
All right. Appreciate the input from everybody. Anything else? Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. It is 9:11. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, everybody. Good meeting.
Good night, John Boy.
Bye, Mary.
Hi, Mary Ellen.
Bye.